What's up? This is the second video, I guess day 2 of documenting my process of teaching myself computer science. So I did make it to a second day. I didn't immediately give up. That's a good sign. Had work today at my internship. Got some stuff done. I've got tomorrow off, so that's hype. But I am going to try to maintain my sleep schedule. So I am going to be making this video. As you can see, it's night like it always is. And going to bed. I'll be waking up and locking in the morning tomorrow. But per my rotation today, I was supposed to review some notes. So that's what I did. I've been keeping notes on Obsidian about all the things I've been trying to learn about. And honestly, might be good to go ahead and put them on GitHub so I can port them across my computers. Haven't really thought about that. I don't know if there's any... No, there shouldn't be any special behavior that Obsidian injects into it. Maybe there's like a .obsidian file, like there's a .git file, or folder rather. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure I should be able to commit this to GitHub and then be able to pull that repo and then start up Obsidian on another computer and have everything connect the way that it should. I'll have to look into that. But that's beside the point. I keep a bunch of notes in there. It's usually just pretty simple markdown files. I'm not doing anything crazy, but I looked at a couple things here. I've got them pulled up on my computer. I looked at my notes on base64 and coding. I looked at my notes on env files, file buffers, file systems, network ports, shebangs, and secure shell. So if those things are all really random and it doesn't make sense why they're all grouped together, that's because they are. The way I was doing this previously was I would just get interested in something or I get exposed to something and I would decide to go read some articles, watch some videos, ask AI about it. And then oftentimes I wouldn't even write it down, but I made an effort of starting to try to write it down, which is why I'm using this Obsidian Vault in the first place. But I've found that I've reviewed these notes a couple times, right? And it's starting to feel a bit redundant, which is good to me because that means that I'm actually keeping it in memory and I'm remembering the things that I'm reading. So, for example, I was rereading my notes on base64 and coding and I just kept hitting the same points. I was like, yep, I already know this, I already know this, I already know this. So that's good. I think it takes a long time to really commit something to permanent memory, and the only way to really commit it to permanent memory is to understand it deeply enough that you can rederive it or intuit it from just a basic abstraction. So like obviously I'm not gonna always remember the exact nuances of some of these things, but if I understand how they function, I should be able to logically derive how they work just based off of a general understanding of their behavior. And that's what I'm aiming for. I mean, I'm not gonna have all of this information constantly sitting in my head like a giant bank of information, but more so I want to understand the information well enough and be familiar enough with it that I am able to take the high-level concepts and reconstruct it in a pretty accurate way, and then anything that I might be missing, I can go back, I can search up, I can consult my notes, etc. But that's generally my goal with all of this note-taking and the note review, which is what I'm doing today, is I think oftentimes what I would do in the past is I would learn about something or I'd get interested in something. I would watch some videos, I'd nod my head along, probably not paying full attention to the video. It would stay in my head for a day or two, and then 6 months down the line, I would have essentially no recollection of that topic or that concept. And it's because I didn't do anything to either A, write it down and document it, or B, use some mechanism like reviewing to help commit it into my more permanent memory. And so it's frustrating because I feel like a lot of the time that I spent learning about things without writing them down and reviewing them was almost wasted because I don't remember it. And it's as if I was never exposed to it because I really don't have any persistent memory or understanding of those ideas. And that's what I'm trying to rectify here. But yeah, I think what's most pertinent right now is the things that I've read about file buffers and base64 encoding, because I'm trying to do that project where I implement the base64 algorithm. Started on that last night, by the way, but didn't get too far. The main thing was I was trying to scope out the way that Python represents bytes And so I looked at a couple of different cases. I looked at the case where you encode a string with like the string.encode method, and then you specify the encoding, what would you call it? Like the encoding standard, so utf-8, utf-16, etc. And I also looked at what happens when you read in an image using like the context, what are those called? Context managers, where it's like with open file name, mode, as f.read or whatever, how images, and I assume other files as well, get read in as binary or I guess bytes objects when you use the with open context manager. I'm not sure if context manager is the right phrase to describe what I'm talking about, but that's just what I'm going to call it. I think you guys know what I'm talking about. So I saw two general ways to do it. So you can take a string, encode it as a bunch of bytes, or you can take an existing file and read it in as a bunch of bytes. And from what I could gather, there's different ways to represent bytes in Python. You can either have it as just a regular integer from 0 to 255. You could have it in binary format. You could have it in hexadecimal format. I guess technically you could also have it in octal format. I'm not sure if it supports octal, but I know that's another common one. But regardless, one thing I noticed when I was working with the strings was that if it's a regular ASCII character and you encode the string and then you print that bytes object, it's just like a, like a F string where it's like F quote content quote. It's the same thing, but it's with the B as a prefix for binary, or I guess maybe for bytes. However, if there are characters in your string that aren't ASCII characters, then they get encoded as hexadecimal numeric representations of those byte values. It's like if you have an emoji, it might get encoded as a bunch of different bytes, like 3 or 4 bytes in a row. And rather than having those bytes just be displayed as characters or integers, it's explicitly displayed as hexadecimal numbers representing a byte value between 0 and 255. So that's helpful because I'd seen that before and I didn't really understand why I would encode something and I would have just random letters, and then within that sequence of letters I would have these escape sequences with hexadecimal numbers. But that was helpful. That clarified it for me. Another thing I learned when I was just messing around and scoping out this project yesterday was that UTF will use different numbers of bytes to encode characters. So if it's a common character like a letter or a number, that gets 1 byte. And then if they're a less common character, it will get 2, 3, or 4 bytes. And the first byte in that sequence of 2, 3, or 4 will have a certain numeric value, which will tell you that, hey, the next X number of bytes after this byte are all grouped together. I don't remember exactly how that worked, but it was something like if a given byte has a certain value, you'll know that you're supposed to read that byte and the next byte after it together, or that byte and the next 2 bytes, next 3 bytes after it together, which I thought was interesting because otherwise, if you don't have some sort of convention like that established in a character encoding standard, then how would you be able to tell if bytes are meant to be grouped together for a character or if they're all just regular bytes that you should be treating as isolated units? See, this is the sort of thing that I mean where it's like, I feel like most people don't go this deep with this sort of thing, but I love this. I love doing this with math where you would take some formula, some algorithm, or some theorem, and you would keep asking why and reduce it down to something fundamental that you either understood intuitively or that was so obvious that it could be taken as an axiom. And it's definitely slow trying to learn this way when you have one question that leads to another question, and oftentimes all that you end up with is a web of concepts that you don't understand and you don't really know how to reduce it down to first principles. But I just find this very interesting, and I know once I finish this project, it's going to be very enlightening with how base64 encoding and character encoding works in general, because these are things that we use on our computer all the time without realizing. And it's just really remarkable the amount of thought that people have put into these character encoding standards, all of these computer conventions. It's really remarkable because without all of these levels of abstraction that you're able to build on top of, we wouldn't have anything we have today. And they started from extremely primitive hardware, built that up, eventually managed to get to rudimentary programming languages, built that up, made compilers from straight machine instructions, I'm pretty sure, and now we've got we've got ChatGPT and we've got vibe coded CRUD apps. But yeah, I digress. Point being, today I spent time reviewing. I think it was good, but I also think that there's a need for me to go deeper on some things, especially in coding standards. I think if I want to get this base64 implementation project right, I need to have a good understanding of encoding standards and how they work. And I think that's something I'm going to need outside the scope of this project, strictly speaking. I'm going to probably see it show up again and again and again. And so I think really understanding utf-8 is going to be very valuable for me. So I think I'll probably spend some time tomorrow and get that sorted out. I would have maybe spent all day tomorrow working on this, or at least a large portion of the day, but someone decided to try to break into my car and rip the car door, or not the door, rip the handle off the door. So got to go get that fixed tomorrow. But aside from that, I should have plenty of time to do some reading, do some research, and get some work done. So hopefully I'll have a good update and some interesting things to talk about tomorrow. But other than that, thank you for watching this video. If you guys are working on similar stuff, please reach out or leave a comment. I would love to get into contact with other people that are trying to do the same thing that I'm doing, and maybe we can form some sort of system or some sort of group to hold each other accountable and track the progress. But yeah, nothing too exciting today. Just did some review, but I've got myself set up for some other things I need to get deeper on, and that should hopefully allow me to make some pretty good progress tomorrow I can report back on. So that's all for this video. I hope you guys have a good one.